very privileged to be joined today by Jonathan Berry. Jonathan is the president of Accelatis, and just to give you a little bit of background, Brightstar Partners and BSP Software has partnered with Accelatis, who offers a performance monitoring and infrastructure management solution in the Oracle and the Hyperion environment. But now through our partnership, we're able to bring Accelatis Ascension Suite into the Cognos environment and also offering a Cognos module. But first, we're going to go ahead and get started with a couple of slides and just give you kind of like a brief introduction about who we are here at Brightstar Partners and BSP Software. So really, there's 4 parts to our organization, and first and foremost, we are a professional services company. We are a Cognos exclusive consulting firm with a number of on-staff, seasoned, and tenured Cognos professionals that really work in a variety of industries, all client sizes and types. So we've done projects ranging from BI and DM1 implementations to upgrades to training, as well as even more specific project-level consulting work. So really, as a result of that vast consulting experience, we started recognizing some very similar pain points that most of our clients were experiencing, and that's really what inspired us to create our BSP software, which kind of leads to the second pillar. We call it our implementation-based software because our solutions are truly born out of what we're seeing in the field every day. So the feedback that we're receiving is how we've developed that software and how we continue to keep developing it. So that's a huge part of making us successful in that area. So the BSP software solutions are really designed to help automate, to streamline, to enhance, and to extend kind of the functionality of Cognos BI out of the box for your administrators, developers, and power users. So the third part of our organization kind of speaks really to our partnership with IBM. We are a premier level IBM business partner and a reseller of Cognos new licenses and support renewals. So our premier level business partner status really just represents what a great relationship we have with IBM and the large amount of transactions that we continue to execute with them on a monthly basis. So through our experience really with both working with our customers and with IBM, we're truly able to bring a lot of value to our customers during the licensing process. And that's done by explaining the licensing process, the functionality, ensuring the accuracy, and then most importantly is just being able to get the deepest discount. And that's whether it's on new Cognos licensing, Cognos 10 trade-up licensing, and your annual support renewals. So, especially along with your annual support renewals, we really, we kind of encourage you. That's something that, kind of gets put off, and most people don't think about all year. But, I try to encourage all of my clients I'm talking with, hey, find out when your renewal date is, put a reminder in your calendar, contact us, because it's a really simple and easy process for us to save you guys a lot of money. So finally, another way that we partner with IBM is that, IBM is our largest client with hundreds of users within the IBM, around the world that are using our software. So to us, that's just really a true testament of the success that we've had with our software. And so finally, if you look at that fourth pillar of our organization, Cognoise.com. Cognoise.com is the largest online web community of Cognos users outside of IBM. So Brightstar Partners owns and hosts this free forum-based website, and we currently have over 14,000 registered contributors and almost close to 1 million page views a month. So if you haven't had a chance to go take a look at Cognoise, I would strongly encourage you to do so. It's just a great place to go, interact with other Cognos users, and to get help with any issues you may be having. So that's pretty much a high-level overview of who we are at Brightstar Partners and BSP Software. I know that was kind of a lot of information I went over quickly, but if you have questions about anything that I just mentioned, please contact us, and you can reach us at sales@bspsoftware.com. Before we get started with the formal presentation and demonstration, I wanted to go over a few logistics. If you're new go to webinar, if you look on the right side of your screen, you can actually see that there's a section where you can type in questions. We want you guys, if you have questions during this process, to type those in, send them to them. At the end of the presentation, we're going to try to come back and answer as many of those questions as possible. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand things off to Jonathan Berry, who will be showing us the Accelatis Ascension suite. Jonathan, thanks a lot for joining us today, and I'll go ahead and turn things over to you now.
Great. Thanks, John, and thanks everyone for joining. This is Jonathan Berry, and I'm really excited to be talking to you today. I'll start with just giving a little bit of background about Accelatis. So Accelatis Ascension Suite is an application performance management system designed around enterprise applications. And the value that we bring to the table is really threefold. The first is that we're going to make critical performance information more accessible to the business user, and this is really a distinction from a lot of standard tools that are available today. The second is that we take a much broader view of what application performance management means, and as we get into the demo, I'll discuss a little bit more about that. And then lastly, we take a much deeper view of what application performance management means, and we'll discuss that as well. And this is really where our partnership with BSP Software has come into play, where they brought their experience in this space to help us create this joint offering. So Accelatis Ascension Suite is really comprised of various types of information all brought together in one place. And when most people hear application performance management, they immediately think of monitoring, and they think of KPIs and these sorts of things. And that's all very important. It's really one aspect of the solution, what you're about to see. But what we offer as a whole is everything from day-to-day management of an environment, which is everything from managing logs and retrieving logs to automatically reviewing configuration information and automation. And then it's monitoring, so things that are running in the background to ensure that the Cognos environment is performing the way that you'd expect it to. And ultimately, a lot of that is really geared toward improving the mean time to recovery and ensuring that the quality of service is as good as it can be. And what Accelatis has also done is integrated several other areas of functionality throughout the system. This is really what kind of glues everything together, is that when it comes to simulations or load generation, these are things that are integrated throughout the system, both in management and monitoring and reporting, as a way to really provide this early warning system of anything that's happening in the system. Also, we seamlessly integrate various elements of optimization to the system so that in one place you can go to get all of your monitoring information, day-to-day management, as well as create a methodology for planned optimization, a repeatable methodology for optimization. And this is really all geared toward being able to anticipate. And this is both on with regard to proactive alerting, so that you're not waiting for problems to happen and then be notified. We're actually identifying patterns of activity and being notified before there's a problem, as well as capacity planning, so knowing what the system can handle before rolling out to users or before adding users into an environment. So with that, I'll jump over to the demonstration. Okay. So just a little bit of background about what we're looking at right now. This is the Accelatis Ascension Suite interface. And on the left we have navigation to the various modules, and on the right we have the content area. And as I open up various modules, you'll see the tabs appear across the top. The very first thing I'll talk about are the dashboards, because by describing the dashboards, it will provide you'll have some underlying understanding about what's happening, on an ongoing basis in the system. And the first thing I should preface all of this is that the Accelatis interface is not something that a user would have to sit in front of all day long waiting for a color to turn green to red. It's a place to proactively get information that's needed or reactively troubleshoot problems. But ultimately, once Accelatis is installed, alerting would be set up so that administrators or the relevant users or stakeholders would be notified whenever there's something relevant happening in the system. The dashboard will allow us a place to kind of see everything in one screenshot and to drill in further to get more information. So the types of things we're looking at here, and again, dashboards are something that are very easy to create, they're very flexible to configure, and they can be provisioned for different types of users. The one we're looking at right now really has a mix of everything, but they could be very detailed with just performance graphs like we have down here on the bottom, or they could be very high level, showing things like this, the remote node map that we have in the top left. So I'll take a little bit of time to discuss what each widget does, and in the process, again, you'll understand what's happening under the covers. And ultimately, what you should see as we go through the demo is that for someone managing an IBM Cognos environment, the vast majority of information you need when it comes to managing the environment should be just a couple of clicks away. So whether it's getting log information, information about what users are doing at any time, it's all just a few clicks and it's in your hands. So you can avoid having to go out to multiple servers to get the information you need and spend more time focusing on your business. So the first thing we're going to look at is this remote node map in the top left. And ultimately what it's showing us is a view of the world, and there's different views that we can look at and configure, but it's showing us what our user experience is from various locations around the world. So I know many of the folks on the webinar right now are international companies with user locations, not just in the United States or Canada, but located on all continents. So what this does is allows us to very quickly see what the user experience is, and it's going to show everything from network connectivity as well as what's happening within how users are experiencing the Cognos infrastructure. So the value of this is really twofold. The first is that we know from a user perspective whether they are in good shape or not. Is everything performing well? So that's very important right off the bat. And if there's ever an issue, if there's ever a performance slowdown, it can be configured so the administrator would be notified. But beyond that, what this can help us with is quickly determining where a problem may lie. So, today in a lot of places, you'll be notified that there's a problem for your user here in London because the help desk gets a phone call that a user is either trying to get a Cognos report or do some activity, and it's either failing, it's not returning, or it's returning but taking much too long of a time. And we look at these as hard failures and soft failures, where a hard failure means it failed. A soft failure means it's working, but the performance is so poor that someone's still going to pick up the phone and contact the help desk. So with Accelatis in place, we can drill into this and quickly know whether this is a network issue or a Cognos infrastructure issue. So you can immediately cut half of the investigation process out of the picture, where if it's detected it's a network problem, you can go right to the network engineers, whether they're in-house or outsourced, and address the problem there. And Accelatis will provide background information about the network anomaly. It'll provide ping information, trace route information, as well as a full history, so that all the things that the network engineer would normally do and usually have a 4 to 6 hour turnaround window for, Accelatis can provide. So I mentioned before about providing critical information into the hands of the business user. This is a case where the business user does not have to rely on a third party like an outsourced new network company to tell them what's going on in the network. They can go with quantifiable information to that group and say, listen, there's a problem. This is the information we have. Let's work together to address it. So by having one source of data regarding performance and outages, it can facilitate a more collaborative environment for getting the system back running again. The flip side of that is if we show that the network is fine, that connectivity's been fine, there have been no issues and everything's performing well on the network, then immediately we can say, you know what, we don't need to focus on the network, let's focus on the Cognos infrastructure and dive in there. So there's quite a bit more that we can do with this, but again, at a high level, it's going to give you reassurance that of what your users are experiencing, and it will help you troubleshoot the issue and really streamline the process for getting resolution. And one more thing I should say is that in addition to network checks and core infrastructure checks, and I keep using the term user experience, and by that I mean Accelatis through the Cognos plugin will provide full synthetic transactions, which is a technical term for a user simulation. So it's not just doing network checks, it's actually from these remote locations. It will, in the background, be simulating true user activity, simulating all the steps that a user would do to log in, retrieve the report that they need, log out and such. So the system will be in the background doing this. So if there is a failure or a performance slowdown, you can know about it before any users ever experience it for themselves. So some of the other things we can show in a dashboard, and again, this dashboard is a little bit busy because we're trying to show a lot of different information. It could be something very technical. Here I have a performance graph. And here we have some basic information, things like processor and memory, network information, things like this. But this can also contain things like response time. What Accelatis does is it takes all sorts of performance information, whether it's KPIs that you're familiar with today, things like CPU and memory and disk space and all those standard performance counters, as well, and blend in custom Cognos counters, so things that are very specific to Cognos. And then we can take other sorts of performance information, things like response time and uptime and benchmark task performance. So things that are more about user experience, and we can bring it all together in one place. So in one screen, in this one graph, we could potentially have the response time for a benchmark report as seen from every user location. So if you have 10 user locations around the world, you could have a graph with 10 lines that shows the response time over the last day or over the last week or month of that report. And that tells us a couple of things. It very quickly points out if there is a performance drop, but it also helps set expectations where a user in Chicago may have a much different performance expectation than a user in Paris, depending on where the servers are located, so that when someone calls the help desk and they're from Paris, you can say, well, know what? These reports on average take between 8 and 10 seconds, whereas the same user calling from Chicago, you know that, know what? These reports usually take between 1 and 3 seconds. So there's a lot of information we can bring in here and a lot of ways that we can bring it together to start reconciling how user activity affects the core system, and which ultimately affects how the system responds in performance. Some of the other quick things we can show here are things like who is logged into the system. We can also show uptime at the component level. So you probably right now have all sorts of tools. In fact, most Accelatis clients already have performance management tools. And what they find with Accelatis is that it will handle their core solution, in this case Cognos, at a much deeper level than the other tools that they have. It also integrates nicely with the existing tools. So if an investment's already been made, that investment's not lost. Accelatis can come in and do the Cognos specific work and integrate with whatever you already have in place. But one example of where we can provide uptime at the component level is that even if you have tools that are showing servers and services and databases, with the Cognos plugin, we're monitoring your data sources, your dispatchers, reports that you select, so that we can show at that level. So even if the database has been up and available for the last 24 hours, it's possible that a data source has not, and that will come out very quickly, both as an alert and also something that you can show with uptime. And what that really folds nicely in is to the idea of an SLA, a service level agreement. And a service level agreement is really a performance contract. It's something that you can define, and it could be based on a number of things, everything from user activity, so users executing a particular report or type of reports, could be, you can create an SLA out of that. And the SLA could state that these reports should always execute in 10 seconds or less, whereas this particular report should always execute in 30 seconds or less. And as users are actually running those reports on the system, Accelatis is in the background measuring what percentage of those activities have met that SLA. So it's a higher level metric, and actually prepping for this demo, I wasn't actually able to run any reports, so they all show no data. But if I were able to kick off with you, what you'd see is you'd see SLAs in the 90 percentile or 70 percentile, and it's showing what percentage of reports are meeting our SLA. And the value of this is really a higher level metric, maybe targeting a higher level audience, but it's showing overall performance of the entire environment. And the idea is that as an organization, you can try to improve your performance over time. So, you know, in July, you look and you're meeting 90% of your SLAs, you can target to make that 95 by October and put in concrete steps to quantifiably improve the performance of the system. But the SLAs are all about measuring and reporting on performance at that higher level. Okay. So there's quite a bit more in here, but at the end of the day, just understand this is where the broader and deeper level comes in. We're looking at things that are Cognos specific, but we're also looking at many different types of things. It's not just KPIs and performance counters. We're looking at health, we're looking at configuration, we can look at data, we're looking at the network, and we're looking at the user experience. So we're bringing that all together in one place so that instead of having 6 different tools, one looking at your perfmon information, another looking at your logs, it's all in one place and you'll get the alerts all in the same fashion. Okay. So with that, I'm going to jump over to another module called environments. And this is giving us a quick view of the world. So I can click on a server that has IBM Cognos installed, and in one place we can again see what processes are running, what services are running. We can look at the file system. We can see the users that are currently connected to Cognos. We can even see the jobs that are running. And again, if we go back to the point I made earlier about providing all the information an administrator needs with a few clicks, the idea of this is to do the vast majority of functionality without having to have the administrator remote desktop into a server. And what I'm going to do just as an example is right now we see that in Cognos we have 2 people logged in, Ari and Vince. Now I'm just going to do a quick login here. Okay, let me minimize this. And now when I do a refresh, you see that in real time we're picking up who's on the system. So we can do a lot of things with this information, but if nothing else, you know exactly who's in the system at any time. And pretty soon I'll take you to a page where we can actually see what users are doing at just about any time in real time. So I'm going to jump over to a module called Activity Analysis. And what you'll see here on the left is you'll see various logs. You'll see Windows event logs, you'll see some Ascension Suite logs, and then you'll see some Cognos logs that you're familiar with. Coming soon will be some additional logs like the Cog server log, and what we're going to be doing there is aggregating that into one log, so in one place you'd be able to bring all that data back. But the purpose of this screen is to very quickly grab all the information, all the log data in the system that's relevant to your current task. And some of these logs are real, some of them are synthetic, meaning some logs are presented, don't actually exist on the disk, but they're presented in such a way that we're grabbing information from different places to bring it back in one place. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a few logs, and I'm going to pick the last 2 hours. So if our goal right now is, let's say that there was a problem occurred on the system, and we want to see what was happening leading up to the problem, we can just say, okay, go give me the last 2 hours. Alternatively, we could go in and say, you know what, there was something that we never fully investigated that happened in mid-June. Let's go back to a 6-hour period in mid-June and grab that information. But just by clicking those logs, clicking my time range and clicking the Go button, we're able to see some activity. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back 4 hours. I know that there were some things that happened a little bit earlier in the day. So I'm just going to go back and grab 4 hours worth of data. Okay, very good. This is what I wanted. And what you can see is you can see all sorts of dots on the screen. And right away, some things are jumping out at me because I see some red dots. And really what this is this is all the activity that was happening in these logs, some real, some synthetic, presented in a timeline view. So we can see that we're looking at data starting at around 10:30 this morning Eastern Time up to right around now, which is around 2:30 Eastern Time. And we can hover over any of these items, and we can see what the details of it. In this case, this is the user activity report. So this is something that BSP has created using the IBM Cognos plugin into Accelatis to present user information. And what I see here is that a user called administrator ran a report called the branding report, and it took 1 second to open. So this is good. So we can go back and actually see what users have done in the system, and how long it took them. And I believe some of this is available in the audit database or in other places. But here it's presented in this nice timeline, and I'll show you how this has become very valuable in troubleshooting later on. Another log that BSP has created is the user session log. So you saw on the other screen where I showed you who was currently logged on. Here we're looking at sessions, so we can see, as users log out, what their session was, how long they were on the system, and these were ones that we were running earlier just to get some data into the system. We can see that Drama and Ari were logged in for about an hour and a half. Now coming down here to the report activity, we're getting a little more information, and we put some automation in place to generate these activities, but in the live environment, this would just be what your users are currently doing. And we're seeing various activities. We're seeing how long they took, and a lot of these are running very quickly. Here's one that took 1 second. The rest of them are really sub-second response, so it's barely even registering. And we can actually see if there are errors. We can actually jump in and say, wow, a user was doing something and there was an error, and that'll jump out at us as a red dot. Now, this is all great because we're in a timeline view. You can analyze it. We can actually turn this on in real time and stream it across the screen so we can see it as it's happening. We can also click over to the grid view where all this log information has been normalized, and we can now take this and send it out to Excel. So if Excel is your tool of choice for analyzing activity data, that's fine. Use Accelatis to spend just a couple seconds to get your data, send it out to Excel, and then you can do whatever you want with it there. But with Accelatis in place, now we can do a few other things. Again, I mentioned before that Accelatis is all about getting you the information you need very quickly and bringing a lot of different types of information together in one place. So what I'm going to do is I created a very simple performance graph, and it's actually, this is the same graph that we saw on our dashboard, so I'm reusing the same graph again, but we could have dozens or hundreds of different performance graphs in the system. And this particular one is showing us some basic KPIs, showing us, again, processor, memory, disk space, and network activity. But the cool thing about this is I can now see how user activity is affecting performance of the system. Meaning that if we had a very time-intensive or CPU-intensive task, we would likely see the task as not just a little blip, but something closer to this oval, because we'd see exactly how long it took. And we'd likely see the CPU jump. We'd likely see maybe memory jump, depending on what the type of activity was. If it's something where it's communicating over the network, we'd see network activity jump. But it's a way to bring all the information back in one place so that whether we're trying to be proactive or reactive, we could see how one thing affects another. And where this really creates a lot of value is if there's ever an issue where a server or service fails, this tool can be used to go back in time and see what the users were doing leading up to the failure. And often what we see at clients is that we'll see user activities in purple. Okay, good, they're opening reports, this is all fine. Then what we might see is the report that was taking 1 second is now taking 10 seconds. So things start to stretch out, and then all of a sudden we start seeing failures, and then boom, we'll actually, on the same screen, we can plot Accelatis alerts. And on the same screen, we'd actually see a line and know that, wow, look at this. We could see performance going downhill, we could see failures, and shortly after that, the whole service went down or the whole component failed. So we could see all of that on one, on one screen. So again, quite a bit more we can do with this. Just most important, getting the information very quickly, getting the right information, being able to filter it, and being able to really streamline the diagnostic process. So on this, I'm going to start talking a little bit about health. And health is really many things. It's, we talk about KPIs as telling you what the system is doing. Health is really looking at all the things that are running on your system that are required for IBM Cognos to be healthy. And it could be anything from whether a database is up, it could be whether a service is running, whether a server is available, whether a file share is available. What the BSP guys have brought to the table is a set of pre-built out-of-the-box health checks. So when Accelatis is installed, without you doing any configuration, you would automatically have pre-built checks for things like monitoring your dispatchers for availability in real time and uptime, monitoring and alerting for the active content manager, looking at the responsiveness of all the data sources, various reports that you've monitored, looking to make sure that those are running okay. It's recording user sessions and job and report executions. It's also, you can also tie in automation. So there's a health check, and I'm going to jump over to the screen, and I usually don't because it's kind of busy and it's something that we usually only deal with when we configure a system. But right here at the bottom are some built-in IBM health checks, and they include the things I just discussed, your data sources, databases, various reports. It's also looking at the active content manager, and one thing that happens is that the active content manager has failover built in, and it works very well. And if it fails over, a new one's going to take over, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because the system's up and running, and no one had to know about it. The bad thing is no one knew about it, so things are happening and you're not even aware of it. There's a health check in here that's going to detect if the active content manager ever failed over. So you'll be alerted to it, or you could be alerted to it, provided that's something you want to know. The other side of that, and this is where the value of Accelatis shines, is that we can bring together a lot of different types of functionality, is that when we detect a certain condition, whether it's a database down, a service failed, or in this case the active content manager failover, you could automatically kick off an automation job that would reset the active content manager. So it would automatically reset it when it detected it. Alternatively, you could just be alerted to it, and then there's an automation capability where with just a click of a button within Accelatis, if you're there, you can reset it yourself. So the automation can be done ad hoc, it could be scheduled, or it could be done as the result of an alert. So we can bring all these things together. Okay. So with that, I will hit automation just very briefly, and you'll see more and more Cognos-specific tasks coming in here, but this is where we can build in things like running scripts, sending emails, managing services, and sleeping, all into something where we can do IT maintenance type activity, and again, we can run it ad hoc, we can schedule it, or we could run it as the result of an alert. So anything that would normally happen when there's a failure now or a condition is hit, it is something that we can program in to automatically do those administrative type tasks. I'll show one more thing quickly, and that's in log alert. So something that we can also do is alerting on things that are happening in a log, and it could be like a single log event, or it could be a pattern of activity. So one example is you may just want to know when there's a database failure. So a database failure may occur. It may be in a Windows log, or maybe it's in one of our specific Cognos logs. But what Accelatis does is it abstracts a lot of the dirty details of the underlying system. So whether it's a Windows log or an IBM log, it's all going to be presented and managed the same way. So we could theoretically put in probably an application, or if it's depending on the database, it might be in their specific log. But we could create an alert that would say, listen, if we ever see an alert that contains timeout, and this is in a database log, then we want to know about that. So we could be alerted if any of these logs ever contain something containing timeout. Something else we can do is that, where the case is that one event in the log is really not that relevant, but if we see a pattern of events, so if we're looking at the report activity and we see one report fail, that may not be a big deal. So if we see an error in the IBM Cognos reporting log, that may not be a big deal. But if we see 10 failures, as an example, in 5 minutes, based on your experience with your environment, you may be able to say, no, if we see 10 failures in 5 minutes, something is definitely amiss. I want to know about it. So here's a case where there's a lot of flexibility and granularity about how we can set the alerts so that we're not spammed, but also that we're tuning in enough so that we're not missing key events. And this is where the synthetic logs that the DSP guys have created can now be leveraged in a number of ways where it can be built into, whether it's activity analysis or being able to key off them, and the alert configuration. We can not only view that information in ad hoc form in activity analysis, but now we can key off of it, we can set alerts, we can track the performance of the activities. So you can run reports on what the response time for a particular report has been over the last 7 days or week or month, so that you can see how certain things have responded maybe during the busy times versus when there's very few users on the system. So there's a great deal that we can do by processing that information. So that's the system at a high level. There's actually quite a bit more that would be in the details, and I think given more time, we could get into those details. But if nothing else, just walk away with Accelatis system is a system where with this combined solution, we're providing very detailed and rich IBM Cognos specific monitoring, and it's integrated through the rest of the Accelatis Ascension Suite solution. That everything you saw today is actually all live. There's nothing, we ran some reports before so that we see data, but there was nothing pre-canned, so this is all running on a live system. And all the information, as you saw, is just a few clicks away, usually retrieved in just a matter of seconds. So very quick, and also presented in such a way so that there is one set of quantifiable data so that all the different groups in the organization can work together and really focus on solving a problem and knowing where to look. And it's not always going to, it's not always going to be the silver bullet showing exactly what the problem is, but it's going to provide very specific quantifiable data that everyone can use to work toward finding a solution. So with that, it looks like we're running just about on time, and want to leave a few minutes for questions because it's 2:40 Eastern time. So with that, I should say, John Nove, were there any questions that came through that we should answer while we have everyone on?
Yeah, absolutely. We had several good questions coming in, but first I just wanted to say you did a great job, Jonathan. Nice presentation, and it was just really nice to see the integration between the core data from the Accelatis Ascension Suite coupled with and under the hood Cognos data from BSP software. So you can really see how this can help our customers identify the symptoms of a problem and very quickly correlate that to the root cause of the issue. So fantastic job on the presentation. Let me get to a few questions here. One question came in that says, what additional hardware is required for the Accelatis Ascension Suite?
Sure, good, and we hear that a lot. And one thing I meant to mention and I didn't, so I'm just going to let me inject this first and then answer the question, is that somewhere in the demo, and also if you're on our website or you're looking at any of our current marketing collateral, you'll see a bunch of references to Oracle EPM. So just to be clear, Accelatis Ascension Suite, the system itself, was designed as an open platform, meaning it was designed for systems like IBM Cognos in place. It's true that Oracle EPM was our first set of plugins, our first solutions. So a lot of the information you'll read about Accelatis is more focused on Oracle EPM. But everything we're doing now with Cognos are things that the system was designed for. So I just want to clear that up if there were any questions about that. So with regard to hardware, the system was designed with a couple of things in mind, and the first was that we knew we need to make it very easy for companies to adopt it and bring it in. So we made sure that Accelatis, no additional hardware is required. We do require a database schema to be available for capturing performance data, staging reports and things like that. The requirements for that are still very minimal in relation to other systems, but the Accelatis agents would likely be installed on all of your Cognos servers and any other servers that you wanted to monitor or run performance checks on, but there's no additional hardware required.
Great. I've got another question that says, what effect does monitoring have on the Cognos performance?
Okay, sure. So, once again, coming from, I spent many years working on mission-critical systems, and we knew that when we created this product that it had to satisfy certain conditions, and probably the most important one is that, if we had any impact on performance of, any type of BI or financial system that we'd never get client one. So the system was designed with that in mind. So there should never be any noticeable performance impact on the system. This is something we can quantify for people who have it in-house. You can even tap it and monitor. You can monitor the monitoring tool, and what you'd see is that the system is largely idle, unless it's every few minutes it's taking some data samples and these sorts of things. So it'll be a blip for a very small amount of time, unless you're actually in the user interface pulling log data, and even that, as you saw, I brought back a few hours worth of data and it came back in sub-second response. So the impact should never be noticeable on the core system. Great.
Another question we got is, what is involved in the installation and how long does it take?
Okay. So installation, there's a number of factors, including how many servers there are, but we did go to great lengths to make our installation simple for what we're doing. It'd be nice if it was a one-click and we're done, but just some anecdotal information is that we've done production environments with 20 servers, and in a 2-hour time period, we stand the database up, all the agents are installed and configured, the client that you see now is running, and we're generating our first reports. An important point about this is, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that the vast majority of functionality that you see here is out of the box. So this dashboard was created, but a lot of the constructs on which the dashboard is based, including the performance graphs, come out of the box. So there's best practices for both generic functionality as well as the IBM Cognos specific functionality, and those are surfaced just by installing the agents. And then things like you're seeing now, this dashboard, was probably created in about 10 or 15 minutes. So on the first day, the system is up and running. It's being monitored. You'll be generating reports. And then what might take a little more time is if you want to build automation, or if there's custom work that you want to do. That could take a few more days depending on how deep you want to go. But in one day, the system's going to be up and going, and the user interface will be available and reports will be generated.
Well, great. Looks like it's about time to wrap it up here. But again, Jonathan, that was just a fantastic presentation, and I know that you were just really, able to scratch the surface of what the full capabilities are, of this product. So if you want to throw up that next slide where it just kind of has our contact information, because we were only able to, just touch on the very, very tip of this, we would, of course, welcome you guys to contact us. You can contact me directly. That's my email address, my phone number here at the office. We'd be more than happy to get you more information. And also, of course, we have the ability to do a demo to really go down into, a much more detail and hit the subject areas where you're interested in. So, with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and thank everyone for attending today. Hopefully we were able to get to your questions, but if not, be assured that we'll follow up with each and every one of you, and we'll get you the answers to those questions. Also, we are recording this, and we'll have this posted on YouTube by this weekend, so you can also find it there if you want to kind of go back over some of this information. So should you have any other questions regarding the Accelatis Ascension Suite or anything Brightstar Partners or PSP software related, like our new licensing purchases, upcoming support renewal, service need, please don't hesitate to contact us. We would love to help you. And again, thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you all at next month's edition of our Wednesday webinar series. Have a great day, everyone.